Tonight on Reporting Scotland, 4 women tell BBC Scotland News that they were sexually assaulted or raped by the same man in the 1980s and 90s when they were teenagers. The alleged attacks took place over an 11-year period in Dumfries. One of the girls was only 15.
I maybe couldn't fight back when I was 18, but I can fight back now. He needs to be held accountable for the crimes that he's committed and the lives that he's destroyed.
Police arrested and charged a man just days before the BBC Disclosure investigation was due to air. Also on tonight's programme, a boys-only private school in Edinburgh is criticised for a culture which involved dreadful abuse of children for 6 decades. The Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry concludes that child protection issues at Merchiston Castle School were ignored. Also on the programme.
You know, if you lose 2 babies, you've lost part of your family.
The First Minister apologises for a state-sanctioned social experiment on Scotland's gypsy travellers, where children were removed from their families. A con man who tricked luxury hotels and stores into buying Scottish-grown tea that was actually from abroad is jailed for 3.5 years.
And coming up in tonight's sport, Rangers make their first signing of the Russell Martin era.
Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. Four women have told a BBC investigation they were sexually assaulted or raped by the same man in the 1980s and 90s. The alleged attacks took place in Dumfries over an 11-year period when the women were teenagers. One was aged 15. Days before the BBC was due to broadcast its claims, police arrested the man. He denies the claims. A warning that this report from our investigations correspondent Mark Daly contains accounts of sexual violence.
I maybe couldn't fight back when I was 18, but I can fight back now.
Fiona is one of 4 women who've told a BBC investigation they were raped or sexually assaulted by the same man in Dumfries. In 1989, after a night out at a club, Fiona, then 18, ended up back at a local man's house.
The next thing I remember was being down on the floor. He had me pinned down with one arm. And he then proceeded to rape me. I kept saying to him, no, 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 but he didn't stop.
5 years earlier, in 1984, Fee says the same man attacked her. She'd gone upstairs to lock up at the pub she worked at, and he'd followed her.
He knew that there'd be nobody up there. He was prowling. And he put me right down on the ground. He pinned me to the ground and started kissing me. I thought, there's no way, you're not doing this to me. And I just fought and fought.
Do you think that if you hadn't fought so hard, you would have been raped that night?
Definitely.
The 2 women spoke to police in 2005, but prosecutors said there wasn't enough evidence to take it to trial. Police reopened the case last year. Now, 2 new alleged victims have spoken to the BBC. The details of one of them, who was 15 when she says she was raped, was passed to police 20 years ago, according to Fiona. But this woman says the police have never been in touch.
The police have had her details for 20 years because I gave them that.
We're not naming him for legal reasons.
Mark Daly from BBC Disclosure. A few questions for you, if you don't mind.
No, thank you.
Are you a rapist?
No, I'm not. I've been very...
Did you rape women?
No, I don't, and I wouldn't never.
One of these women
I've heard it all before.
said that she was aged 15 at the time. She was a child.
No, she wasn't.
Do you remember her?
I was never with her.
The man's lawyer told the BBC he was innocent of all criminality and said claims in 2005 were robustly investigated by the police and he was never prosecuted. A few days after we put questions to the police about their handling of this case, they arrested and charged the man. The women in this case remain determined to see justice done.
He needs to be held accountable for the crimes that he's committed and the lives that he's destroyed.
Fiona there talking to our investigations correspondent Mark Daly. And if you have been affected by sexual abuse or violence, details of help and support are available at bbc.co.uk/action line. Or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on the number on your screen now. And you can see Mark's documentary, The Rapist in Our Town, at 8 o'clock tonight on BBC One Scotland and on iPlayer. A boys-only private school has been criticised for a culture which involved dreadful abuse of children by teachers almost continuously for 6 decades. The Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry report into Merchiston Castle School in Edinburgh has ruled pupils were subjected to sexual, physical and emotional abuse by members of staff whose behaviour went largely unchecked. Maura Kinneborough reports.
This inquiry found sustained, serious sexual and other abuse went on here at Merchiston Castle Private School for Boys in Edinburgh. Inquiry Chair Lady Smith has ruled that for 60 years between the 1950s and 2010s, there was more or less a continuous line of consistent abuse perpetrated by teachers against generations of boys. Teachers carried out sadistic beatings using extreme violence. It was well known, but the school did not stop this.
She found 8 teachers, 7 men and a woman, abused children sexually. 2 of them were prolific, working together to abuse boys in a way which became normalised for decades. The teachers' long service and positions of power in boarding houses protected them. The inquiry chair, Lady Smith, ruled concerning behaviour was recorded, but obvious abusive trends were repeatedly missed and child protection concerns were ignored. The Merchiston culture, where toughness in adversity was encouraged, facilitated and exacerbated the abuse. It wasn't until an inspection in 2014 and a wider police inquiry that the school was placed in special measures by the Scottish Government and improvements were made. This afternoon, the school issued a statement offering its sincere, profound and unreserved apology to all those who suffered.
Its current head has said it fully accepts the criticisms, acknowledges the failures and deep harm caused, and it's committed to learning lessons with safeguarding as its #1 priority.
Maura Kinneborough with that report there. The First Minister has apologised to Scotland's traveller community for the so-called Tinker experiments that saw children removed from their families and travellers forced to settle in substandard housing. The formal apology from John Swinney was delivered as research into the historic treatment of travellers concluded that it amounted to cultural genocide. Our political correspondent Lindsay Bewes has more.
You know, if you lose 2 babies, you've lost part of your family.
Martha Stewart was 6 months old when she and her sister were taken from their parents. She never saw them again and only has this photograph of her father. It took years to get to the truth about what happened.
I was so determined. I wanted to find out because sometimes the same questions you asked when your social worker would come to visit be a different story every time.
Her family was one of many within the traveller community whose children were forcibly taken into care as part of what was known as the Tinker experiments. Today at Holyrood, members of that community watched on as the First Minister apologised.
The Tinker experiments should not have happened. Those policies were wrong. And we recognise how much it is still hurting so many today. And more than anything else, I want to say this. On behalf of Scotland, we are sorry.
The formal apology came as research commissioned by ministers laid bare the extent of the social experiment that also saw travellers forced to settle in substandard accommodation across Scotland.
These policies had led to discrimination, to assimilation and to the dehumanisation of gypsy travellers in Scotland. And taken together, we said that that could be characterised as cultural genocide.
Davy Donaldson has investigated the impact of these state-sanctioned measures in a podcast. He says the formal apology is just the start.
We need to see this opening a door to much wider conversations around healing and not just recognising Scottish gypsy travellers as an Indigenous culture, but actually valuing it.
For Martha and many others like her, while wrongdoings have finally been acknowledged, the damage caused can never be fully repaired. Lindsay Bewes, reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
To some of the day's other stories now. And a man has been arrested after the death of a baby in Aberdeen. Police said officers were made aware of an injured 2-month-old boy who'd been taken to Royal Aberdeen Children's Hospital on the 11th of June. He died a short time later. Police Scotland said a 32-year-old man had now been arrested in connection with the death and released pending further inquiries. The Scottish Government's education bill is set for a final vote later today. It's expected the Scottish Parliament will vote through the bill. It will create a new exams body called Qualifications Scotland and a new office, His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Education in Scotland. The bill will also ensure British Sign Language is given equal provision as Gaelic in the schools here. The former MSP Wendy Alexander claims she was asked to leave her post at Dundee University after asking uncomfortable questions about the institution's finances. Miss Alexander was the university's Vice Principal International for almost a decade, but retired last year. Her comments were made in a statement submitted to Holyrood's Education Committee. The university currently faces a £35 million deficit and said it must cut 300 jobs. Now, he tricked some of the top hotels into buying what they thought was Scottish-grown tea. In fact, it had been imported from abroad. Thomas Robinson also conned aspiring tea growers by selling them plants he claimed had been specially engineered to grow in Scotland's climate. In reality, he bought them in from Italy. It was a £500,000 scam. Today, he was jailed for 3.5 years. The 55-year-old said hubris and arrogance had led him to believe he knew best. Stephen Gordon reports.
This is where the tea starts. This is the tea nurseries.
Isla Henderson began growing tea on the west coast of Scotland 7 years ago after hearing an interview with self-styled expert Tam O'Brien.
All of these big plants here we bought from Tam. He told us that we were buying tea that had been selectively bred in Scotland for 11 years.
In reality, the supposedly Scottish tea plants came from Italy.
It was all very horrible when we found out that it was a fraud. You know, we really felt lied to and we felt quite betrayed. He was very convincing that he was knowledgeable about the crop.
Going to be mother? Wonderful. Yes.
The £500,000 fraud also involved importing the finished product and passing it off as Scottish at inflated prices. To high-end customers and the media, he sold the lie with gusto.
We've got global buyers coming in from China, North America, South America.
He tricked the Balmoral Hotel into offering an exclusively Scottish tea menu, a story that for those in the know simply didn't add up.
I could read these descriptions and see that he was alluding to specific plantations around Scotland. But I also knew that none of these plantations had actually produced any tea by this point, and that made it extremely suspicious.
After Food Standards investigators became involved, analysis of tea samples he'd been selling showed the leaves didn't come from Scotland.
It was unlikely that he could have possibly grown sufficient tea in the quantity that he was selling to these top-end establishments. It was also quite clear that he was unlikely to be able to grow the amount of plants that he'd sold to all the tea growers, given the amount of land he had available to him, and given the Scottish weather and climate.
The tall tales of Tam O'Brien weren't limited to tea. He told people he'd spent years living in a canoe on the Amazon, that he'd been an army bomb disposal expert, and that he invented the supermarket bag for life. During his trial, prosecutors said he'd lied to everyone he encountered. Today's sentencing brings the fantasy to an end. Scotland's small band of tea growers can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Stephen Gordon reporting Scotland.
Scotland's biggest council has been struck by a cyber attack. Glasgow City Council says some customer data may have been stolen, but it doesn't think details of bank accounts or credit and debit cards have been compromised. Well, let's speak to our news correspondent, Jamie McIver. Jamie, what do we know about this?
Well, Laura, the council says it was targeted last Thursday and it's now taken a number of services offline as a precaution. So, for example, a lot of services which are normally available over the internet are now out of action. For instance, systems for paying penalty charges or reporting school absences. But as you said, it's confident details of bank accounts and credit and debit cards haven't been compromised. Still, it's urging the public to be cautious and to be wary if they're contacted by someone claiming to be from the council.
It's going to take at least several days till we have a complete understanding of what has happened. If you have interacted with us using any of the services that we provide online, which are listed now on our website, you should be particularly cautious if you're contacted by anyone claiming to be from Glasgow City Council.
Clearly a worrying time for some people. An investigation is now underway. What do we know about that?
Yes, indeed. It's a joint investigation. It involves Glasgow City Council, Police Scotland and organisations including the National Cyber Security System. And of course, Glasgow City Council is only the latest public body to suffer a computer security breach. The council does say that communicating with it by email is safe. It's apologising for the inconvenience, and we should have more details soon if it's arrangements to access services until things get back to normal.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one. OK, thank you, Jamie. The Fire Brigades Union is claiming that wide-ranging changes to the fire service in Scotland could cost lives, despite assurances from senior officers that public safety won't be compromised. The service is proposing the closure of up to 13 stations and new arrangements for night and weekend cover in some areas. Our Home Affairs correspondent David Cowan reports.
Just as they have done for more than 200 years, these new firefighters have agreed to put their lives on the line to protect the public. But the service they're joining and the job they're being asked to do is changing. Balmossy Fire Station in Dundee is one of 13 under threat of closure.
There are a lot of houses around that area.
You've got a lot of people, and I think the fire station should be fully operational.
We need it. Why would they close? Why would they?
The service says it needs to reduce its running costs and adapt to changing demand. House fires are now at an all-time low, with fewer fatalities and casualties, but wildfires and floods are increasing. Some stations were built to protect industries which are long gone. 23 options involving more than 30 stations in 14 areas are going out to public consultation.
Any changes we will make will only be done if it ensures the safety of the communities of Scotland. We will not jeopardise people's safety by making these changes. But this is a really important step for the organisation to make sure that the service is fit for Scotland's future, not Scotland's past.
The temporary withdrawal 2 years ago of 10 appliances and 166 firefighters could become permanent. The Fire Brigades Union says the service is already on its knees and further cuts could be dangerous.
The principle of 24/7 fire cover across the communities of Scotland is really important to us. Any delay to a response to a fire is significant and could be life-threatening.
8 stations designated long-term dormant are under threat. This one, on Fetler in Shetland, hasn't been fully operational for years because local people aren't willing or physically able to volunteer as its crew.
I think that the fire service should try and come up with a much simpler model for remote rural communities because we can't be unique.
The service says more change will follow in years to come. For now, communities have 12 weeks to have their say. David Cowan, reporting Scotland.
OK, let's get the sport now with Sheila. And between us, we are bringing the brightness to the studio tonight.
We sure are, very coordinated with our set. It's
all planned.
Almost like we planned it, yes, indeed. Hello there, let's start with some transfer news. And Bournemouth fullback Max Aarons has become Russell Martin's first signing as Rangers manager, with the 25-year-old moving to Ibrox on a season-long loan. Aarons has represented England at under-21 level and spent the second half of last season on loan to Spanish side Valencia. Martin says Aarons is a wonderfully talented player who is hungry to develop, improve and help deliver success. Tony Bloom says he wants Hearts to disrupt the pattern of domination in Scottish football after his investment in the club was formally completed. The Brighton and Hove Albion owner has ploughed in almost £10 million in exchange for a 29% share in the Tynecastle club. As part of the deal, Bloom is entitled to one seat on the Hearts board as Now, Hibernian will start the defence of their Scottish Women's Premier League title at home to Aberdeen as the teams prepare for a new format this season. The top flight will shrink from 12 clubs to 10, with the league splitting into a top 6 and a bottom 4 after everyone has played each other twice. Hibs lifted the trophy after winning a final day showdown against Rangers. The Ibrox side kick off against Montrose. Glasgow City, who finished runners-up, are at home to Motherwell. The SWPL says it's striving for constant improvement.
I think that is part of our role, is to try and always improve the league. It's been incredible, and I don't know if it's luck or judgment. Sometimes I like to claim it's judgment, but we've had 3 conclusions to the season where we've gone to the final day. So while we can't promise that we can deliver drama every year, I think we can promise to try. And with the new format and everything that I've described around that, trying to make it much more competitive across the whole season, I think we've got a really good chance of delivering the best ever SWPL season.
Rugby and Scotland prop Pierre Schumann says he has every right to represent the British and Irish Lions after the team were questioned for the number of foreign-born players in the squad. The Lions are in Perth preparing for their first Australian tour match against Western Force. Schumann is one of 8 players born in the Southern Hemisphere, a selection that's been questioned by Lions great Willie John McBride and former England scrum half Danny Kerr.
If you're good enough to play for your country and then you're good enough to play for the Lions and you're selected, obviously you're going to do that. You buy into the culture, and now to represent the British and Irish Lions, you fully buy into that, you fully submerge into that. Nothing else matters, not your past, not the future, it's about the now. Khalil Gibran says it in one of his books quite well, and that is, yesterday is gone forever, tomorrow might never come, now is the time to live. And that's what we do as Lions. It's about the now, this tour, this is what really matters.
Tennis, and Scotland's Hamish Stewart is 1 match away from a place in the Wimbledon men's singles after coming through a nail-biting deciding tie-break in the qualifiers. The 25-year-old from Strathlane, ranked 550th in the world, beat Frenchman Luca Van Asch in a deciding set tie-break. He needs 1 more victory against Switzerland's Leandro Ridi to bag a spot in the main draw at the All England Club. Elsewhere, Jacob Fernley lost in the second round of the Eastbourne tournament. Now, this week's Scottish Swimming Championships feature one particularly remarkable young athlete. 23-year-old Archie Goodburn from Edinburgh has brain cancer. Diagnosed with 3 inoperable brain tumours, he accepts he may not live to see his 40s. Determined to make every day count, Archie's aiming to swim for Scotland at next year's Commonwealth Games. He also wants to raise awareness of the deadly condition and has been speaking to Kerden Idsan.
Take your marks!
Each plunge into the pool is more than just a training session now. For Archie Goodburn, the water has become his safe space.
11.62s, couldn't split you.
I've identified a few things in my life that I can refer to as rocks, something I can hold myself to when, life's getting a bit too much of a whirlwind.
Turmoil caused when seizures last year turned out to be a whole lot worse.
It's a moment I'll never forget for the rest of my life when I sat down at the edge of the pool where I've trained my whole life, to find out that there's a brain tumour.
Archie's tumour is quite diffuse, so we wanted to go into the right parietal part of the head, so we had him lying on his back.
Surgery revealed both the nature of the tumours and the time Archie may have left.
I would usually state to patients that the time span can vary on average anywhere between 3 years all the way up to 20 years.
After such a difficult diagnosis, Archie got back in the pool and very nearly became British champion.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever experience someone with such tremendous courage. Within a month, he won the national championships. He then went on to equal his PB at the World Short Course in December, and to me that was possibly the greatest thing I've ever helped an athlete do. It's phenomenal.
Just as phenomenal is Archie's desire to help raise awareness of the condition and any potential new treatments.
It's just whether or not these advancements will come soon enough to help people like me, young people like me, who are currently facing the hard reality that they may not see their 40s.
Brain cancer is the biggest cancer killer of children and people under the age of 40.
I realise now that I'm in a position now with my sport, with my diagnosis, that I have time to raise awareness and shout about this horrible disease that does take so many lives. I see the future in different ways on different days. Days where I wake up from bed, feeling positive and knowing that things are coming and hoping that things are going to be out there. Other days, my eyes open and I realise that I have a brain tumour, I have brain cancer, and that there is an end point to my life, and it's much, much earlier than it should be.
He's now targeting next year's Glasgow Commonwealth Games, a journey he hopes can help others battling brain cancer. Kerdy Nitsan, reporting Scotland.
Yeah, truly inspirational there from Archie Goodburn.
Really is, and we look forward to see him smashing it in the pool next year, don't we, at the Commonwealth Games. Yeah, thanks to Archie for sharing his story. OK, Christopher is here with the weather. Where is your yellow suit?
I didn't get the memo, did I? There's a bit of yellow
You've got one,
sunshine
though,
around
haven't you?
tomorrow.
You've
Can I
got
get
one,
away with that
Christopher.
one? Not a lot of sunshine today, though, was there? Pretty cloudy conditions there, and that was replicated across the country, Laura. Thank you. Good evening to you. Yes, brilliant picture here, actually, from the Ayrshire coast, looking at Ailsa Craig there. But you can see rather leaden skies. It didn't break as much as we had hoped it would, unfortunately, but there should be a bit more sunshine tomorrow. Tonight, we've got a lot of cloud around once again and outbreaks of rain moving west to east. And through the early hours, it could turn heavy and persistent for a time. Not a cold night, temperatures for some holding in the teens. But certainly first thing tomorrow will be a cloudy and a wet start to Thursday. That rain heavy and persistent for a time, but it moves eastwards out towards the North Sea. So by the time we reach lunchtime and the early afternoon, what a difference. It should be a good bit drier and a good bit brighter as well. So there should be much more in the way of sunshine around tomorrow compared with today. Having said that, actually a little bit cooler than today, however, a bit more cheerful because it's a bit brighter. A number of showers, though, across the Highlands and Islands, and the winds around the west coast just strengthening from a southwesterly direction. You can see the cloud and rain just about with us there in Shetland, but clearing into the evening. And that means many areas having a fairly pleasant evening with some sunshine. However, that sunshine won't last because on Friday, low pressure is situated towards the northwest, this tangle of weather fronts, meaning rather cloudy and wet fare. Initially on Friday morning, showery outbreaks of rain, but that wet weather likely to become heavier and more persistent as we head through towards the afternoon. Sunshine in short supply and the winds strengthening through the day. Temperatures not bad, but certainly wet and increasingly windy. And those winds ramp up further through the course of Friday night. There's that low pressure tracking eastwards on its southern flank, a spell of high winds around the northwest coast, the Northern Isles and the Western Isles. That takes us to the weekend and the sunshine's back. Actually, Saturday the better of the 2 days. A blustery day, 1 or 2 showers in the west, temperatures up to 21 degrees in Aberdeen. And then Sunday, back to cloud with some outbreaks of rain. Warmest through central and southern parts, cooler in the far north. So a real roller coaster of weather over the next few days, Laura.
Thank you, Christopher. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. Anne McAlpine will be here with your late news at 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone on the team, enjoy your evening. Good night.